JJ, the CPA is here.
JJ, the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So PPP is over, Paycheck Protection Program. Congratulations to those that got it, that needed it. For the self-employed, it's easy street. So what am I talking about here? You've gotten that PPP loan, and when you got it, the calculation was line 31 of Schedule C divided by 12 times 2.5. You probably know by now, especially if you've been watching my videos, that the forgiveness is equal to line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5, the same. Boom. But what about the taxation of that for the self-employed? So let's talk about that for a second. When you received the funds from PPP, it represented, in essence, your net income. It represented 2.5 months of your net income of 2019. So when you're then looking at your tax return that you're going to prepare or have prepared for 2020, where does that get reflected? Because we know that for the employers that have employees, the IRS has come out and made it clear that any monies that are being spent from PPP funds will not yield a tax deduction for that. So PPP funds that pay for rent, utilities, business mortgage interest, the payroll costs, which includes the health care and the retirement benefits, state unemployment, right? So any of the funds that are being used from PPP for an employer, they're not going to be able to deduct those payroll costs. For an employer that is not able to use all of their PPP for payroll, and they're including rent, utilities, etc., they're not going to be able to deduct that. But for the self-employed, how does that work? So if you're electing the 24-week option, okay, you get that calculation I told you about earlier, line 31 of Schedule C divided by 12 times 2.5. If you elect the 24-week option, how do you do that? On the application for forgiveness, you'll be able to use the EZ, being self-employed and no employees, and you are, in essence, going to list on the covered period the disbursement date when you got the money plus 24 weeks. And it is okay if you hand in the application before the 24 weeks is up. That's been made clear, and in the recent guidelines from the SBA, crystal clear that you can apply for forgiveness at any time. For the self-employed that are going to hand in that application for forgiveness, you want to use the 24-week option. And here's why. You're then not using any of the PPP funds to pay for rent or utilities or any of the other expenses that would be qualified. I know it's a little bit smaller list, gas in your car. Here's the thing. By doing the 24-week option, your calculation then is line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5. It's all tax-free to you then. There's actually nowhere that you will reflect this on your 2020 tax return as income or a reduction of your expenses. How do we know that? Well, what's PPP? It was 2.5 times, okay, 12-month average, your net income. There's no offset of expenses. So if you do not elect the 24-week period, which makes no sense why you would not elect the 24-week period, but if you didn't, and you are then going with the 8-week calculation, which you do not want to do, but the 8-week calculation is still available, which is line 31 divided by 52 weeks times 8 weeks, which does not get you to full forgiveness. What it does is it gives you an automatic forgiveness of right around 74%, but you would then have to spend money on rent and utilities and interest or have those expenses. But guess what? If you elected the 8-week method and then you're having to use PPP funds for these expenses outside of the automatic calculation, you're not going to be able to deduct those expenses. Now you'll show those expenses on your Schedule C if you went with the 8-week method, but then you will show a reduction of those expenses for the amount that you used from PPP. But if you're doing the 24-week option, I think you're following me at this point. You're not using any of the PPP funds for any expenses, and therefore all of it is no effect to your tax return for 2020. It's just straight up free money, non-taxable, no effect to your deductions. So this is why you want to do the easy application, well, because you can, but this is why you want to elect the 24-week method, because then you're not using any PPP funds for any business expenses, which then not only leads to you getting these dollars tax-free and free, but you're going to then be able to deduct any expenses that you have normally for your business on Schedule C, which means that you actually can use PPP monies to pay rent and mortgage interest and still be able to get the full deduction. And I don't want to bake your noodle here, but for the self-employed, you get to use it for whatever you want, because that money is being given to you. You're going to fill out the application for forgiveness. It's all forgiven. It's an automatic calculation. The only thing you're going to hand in is your Schedule C for 2019, which would need to match what was filed with the IRS. Now, the bank may ask for a couple other things, but my point is you can use it for whatever you want. So I know there's lots of discussions of, well, how do you use PPP funds? When do you pay it out to yourself? For self-employed, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. You can pull out the money all at once. You can put money in your personal account. You can pay off doctor bills. You can, go buy things for your pets. You could pay for a vacation. You could pay for a new car. You could do repairs. You could pay off credit cards. What I'm saying is that with PPP monies, it represents your net income that you can do anything with. So it's a golden situation, and I think rightfully so, for the self-employed. Line 31 of Schedule C divided by 12 times 2.5, that's your loan. It's the same calculation. There's no other requirements related to this. You fill out the EZ, you run the math through, you're at full forgiveness. The only thing that would affect your forgiveness is if you got the Economic Employment Disaster Grant, which we know reduces down your loan forgiveness. But at the end of the day, you're getting full forgiveness. So you can detach any restrictions from the money that you got from PPP because you used it for any purpose and it has no relevance or effect on your forgiveness. So at the end of the day, as soon as you're able to, as soon as your bank will allow you for the self-employed, fill out that EZ loan for a PPP loan forgiveness application. You can go to jjthecpahelp.com and check out my website. I've got the application there for you. And I've got a video that I've done just for the self-employed on how to complete the EZ forgiveness application. And then I don't want to say you're walking away with free money as though you got away with something. It's just you're walking away with free money that is not taxable. That doesn't happen very often. As an example, PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, is taxable. Unemployment benefits, taxable. For those employers that got PPP, they're not able to deduct the expenses they're using PPP funds for, which in essence, it's not taxable, okay? But they don't get to deduct the expenses that they're using PPP funds on, which in some ways makes it technically neutral, but they're not getting the deductions. For the self-employed, you're getting the money, you're getting full forgiveness, it's yours to do with what you like, because it's in essence replacing your net income. All right, hey, there might be another round of PPP coming, completely different set of rules if it does. as I understand it. We don't know if it will be coming around. And so keep your eyes and ears peeled, I guess, as they say, or open as it relates to that, because that's to be in addition to the PPP that we already received. All right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you subscribe, and then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, have a great one.